Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you with us today to talk about 5 ways training and development can help create an innovative culture. And I'd like to say welcome to everyone. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Susan Cullen, and I am president of Quantum Learning Solutions. And for 20 years, we've been developing leaders who can create powerful corporate change and develop innovative culture. So that's really what we do. We work as trusted partners with most of our clients, and we develop long-term relationships with them. And as I have been working with the CEOs of many of these companies, I've had a lot of in-depth conversations about what it takes to really survive and grow into the future. And so there are some things that we've learned that successful companies do that others don't. And so today I'd like to share some of those findings and quite a bit of research with you about that. And before we really begin, let's talk about what innovation is, because a lot of times people will think that it means you've got to have the greatest, biggest, latest technological advance that the world has ever seen. And we know that, yes, that can be one way to think of innovation, new product development, but it's also a lot of times smaller things. It can be smaller, innovative improvements in the way that you do processes. In the way that you work together and collaborate, in the way that you learn and the speed of learning. So we know that innovation can be involved in all of those things. The big picture is that innovation is really what progress is all about, and it's what gives your company a competitive edge in today's market. And so that's really what we see as the key element of innovation. So when we talk about why it's so important, McKinsey did a research project where they found that more than 70% of senior executives say that innovation will be at least one of the top 3 drivers of growth in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's what our clients are telling us too. That's what we've been hearing. But what's really interesting with this is that 65% of all of them are disappointed in their organization's ability to stimulate it. So they know it's really key, but they don't know how to do it. And they also say, almost unanimously, that leadership and culture are the most important drivers of it. So, we really see that leadership is where a lot of the answer lies to creating the culture that you want. So if you believe that innovation is important to your CEO and to your organization, then the question is, well, what should you do and how should you do it? And that's really the topic of this webinar. We recognize now that the learning function is uniquely positioned to really develop cultures that are more innovative and to really make sure that they're not just creative but that they really flourish, and that you need to have the best practice strategies to really help you do that. So this particular session, this webinar, is for you. If you're a learning professional and you really want to help develop a more innovative culture, if you're looking for strategies to help managers and leaders build a more engaged workforce, and if you're really looking for a proven and cost-effective solution that works and that you know that will help you do that. So you may have been thinking about this. You may be not sure how to make it happen, and that's what we want to talk about today. Now, first of all, please know that this isn't easy for anybody, and it's pretty complex. We know that a culture of innovation definitely is the lifeblood of successful companies, but most organizations have difficulty, as we just saw with that last study. So you're not alone in that, and this is really somewhat of a relatively new issue because it's so important in today's market and today's economy. So let's start to look at one of the things that ASTD did, the American Society of Training and Development, is they really tried to do some more research around what are the best organizations doing to ensure a culture of innovation. And so one of the things you can see from this study is that when asked to what extent would you consider your organization to have a culture of innovation, just a little over a third believed that they responded to this, that they did it to a high extent or a very high extent. So that's really what we see here with the gray areas. It's just about 36%, I guess. So, not everybody's doing this well, but there's room for improvement. But the ones that are doing it well are the ones from the best, most successful organizations. So let's start to then look at the qualities of an innovative culture. And then we'll ask you in just a minute, you'll see a polling question come up where we'll ask you how much you believe your organization meets these criteria. So let's look at what they are. What are the qualities of an innovative culture? So one is that they celebrate new innovations. So it's really emphasized, it's rewarded, it's recognized. And that they celebrate rather than punish intelligent risk-taking. So in other words, it's okay to make a mistake if you did it in the effort of innovating, and people are encouraged and understand that that's part of the process. It doesn't mean that you go take, haphazard risks, but, the key is intelligent risk-taking. Another one is that they reward leaders who are adept at encouraging innovation. If so much of this lies within leaders, then you want to be able to have leaders who are going to work one-on-one with each member of their team and encourage it and look at their team as a whole and talk about it and build meetings around it. Then it's important to strive to reduce any barriers to innovation. So that can be things like bureaucracy, any kind of obstacles that get in the way. And it can also be, how safe is it to try new things. And last but not least, they have a widely shared definition of what innovation means. It doesn't have to be the biggest, greatest, largest, most complex, innovative new idea ever. It can be a lot of smaller things that make a difference. So let's take a look now, and I'm going to bring up the first question for you and give you an opportunity to say, to what extent do you think your organization meets these criteria? And so right now you'll see there's an opportunity for you to select one of these particular options. So please go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you the results in just a minute. To what extent do you believe that your organization has a culture of innovation? So let's take a look and see what you think. And if everybody wants to go ahead and take a chance, we still have responses coming in. Okay, I'm going to close it down and show you the results. And so one of the things that we see here is that it looks like we've got 47% saying to a moderate extent, nobody saying very high extent, 16% with high extent, and 37% to small extent. So we've only got a very small group of high extent, and the majority of you are moderate to small extent. So again, please know that you're not alone in that. There's a lot to learn around it. I do want to applaud those of you who said high extent because you're doing some things really well. Okay, so let's go now to begin to start to talk about some of the other parts about where you begin then. So if you realize that you have room for improvement, and even if you were at high extent but you want to be at very high extent, the question is, well, where do you start? How do you begin? And I understand that challenge myself in my own past. Some of my frustration with corporate America, I know there can be a lack of good leadership and innovation, and actually that's one of the things that drove me to want to found Quantum Learning Solutions in the first place. But since then, I've had an opportunity to really help companies develop cultures where excellence, innovation, and engagement can thrive. And here's what we know. The traditional leadership approaches of the past just won't work in today's world. In today's market, in today's economy, you have to encourage people to think outside the box. You have to. If you ever want to be first to market, if you ever want to be a leader in your field, if you want to make sure your organization is going to survive in a tougher economy, this is essential, but it's not easy to know how to do. And so sometimes, the focus on developing innovative cultures starts as a process, and it can still be in its early stages. Here's another example of that. We've worked for some time with a Fortune 500 consumer electronics company, and about 8 years ago, when we first started working with them, the R&D teams working on their Blu-ray technology were not talking to the R&D teams working on cameras. So they were working in silos. And people were very territorial, and they were very guarded about their ideas. They were kind of proprietary. They didn't want other people to know what they were doing because that was their baby, and they didn't want to let anybody else kind of get involved in it. And it was really only when we worked with their leaders that they set the expectation that they need to communicate with different areas of the organization, that they started to break down those silos. And back then, even as early as 8 years ago, we may not have used the terms innovative leadership or innovative culture, but that was all part of what we were doing. And so when we begin to start to talk about where you begin, we wanted to create an agenda for you today that would give you some insight into that. And so today we want to talk about what is it that the high-performing organizations are doing that really cultivates innovation, and give you 5 very specific strategies that the learning function can take. And then end by giving you an opportunity to assess your own organization's climate for innovation now. So I'm going to give you the best and the most that I can in this hour that we have, but I can't put 20 years of experience into this hour, so I promise that before we end today, I will share with you how you can get more information and how you can identify the unique challenges in your own organization. I'm not going to leave you hanging, and I'm also going to provide you with several in-depth free resources and a free assessment that you can use at the end of this presentation. So you'll be able to request them on your feedback form, and they'll immediately be sent to you, and that will also give you some ideas about how to assess your organization's climate for innovation. Now, we do want this to be really interactive and really ask for your participation, so please share your ideas and thoughts as we go along. And there will be several ways that we can communicate. We'll have opportunities to do some hand raising, and sometimes, it's nice. I want to feel like we're all together in one room. And if you look at your attendee list and where your name is, you'll see a little hand next to it, and you can actually raise your hand just like we were in the room together. So if you see it, go ahead and raise your hand now. And let me just make sure everybody sees that. Great. Thanks, Cindy, Bryce. Oh, see, good. Here everybody comes. Okay, wonderful. I'm going to lower all the hands now. Still some people raising them. That's good. I'll go ahead and lower them for now. Now, another thing we're going to do is we'll have more polling questions, so we'll use those again. And feel free to send your questions in the question box. You'll see there's a question box on the bottom of your GoToWebinar panel. The best way to get a question answered is to send us a note, a text message in that question box. Kathy Doris from our office is standing by to monitor those, and she'll respond to many of those immediately. So if you have some questions, she'll be able to answer those. She'll also give us any additional questions at the end, and I'll have an opportunity to answer some of those. So feel free, don't be shy. We want to be able to really make sure we're answering your questions. So let's go ahead and start then to talk about what is it that the high-performing organizations are doing that makes them unique in terms of encouraging innovation. What are some of the practices they have? And I want to share some research with you around that. So here's one of the things that ASTD found, and that was that high performers are more likely to include innovation as a competency. So in other words, when they went back and asked, is innovation included as a competency in your organization's performance management process, they could see that high performers were doing that more than lower performers were. And, the benefit of including innovation as a competency is that it lets everybody understand that they are encouraged to be, not just encouraged, but expected to be innovative. And it enables your managers and leaders to coach the performance of their employees to embrace innovation, because when they get to the end of the year with the performance management process and throughout the year when they're hopefully coaching them around their annual goals, they can begin to start to address how they can be more innovative. So this becomes an ongoing conversation with the leaders. It basically raises the bar for everybody, and it puts the focus on everyone to look for innovative improvements anywhere they can find them. We hear all the time what gets measured happens, so what gets measured gets done. So this is a way to help with that, and it's one key thing to try to let everybody get on the same bus and know that innovation is important in your organization. Another thing that we see, that if most organizations want to be innovative, then why are some of them especially adept at it while others aren't? And the higher performing organizations are able to find ways to eliminate or at least minimize these challenges. So when they were asked, to what extent do you consider the following to be barriers to innovation in your organization? You see these responses here at the very top. The first one that people said was that there was no formal strategy for innovation. And what we see with that is that low performers are just twice as likely to be challenged by that than those who are higher performing organizations. What's also really key is this one around fear of failure and risk-taking among employees. Low performers have a much greater fear of failure and a higher aversion to risk compared to high performers. So we see that one of the strongest characteristics of an innovative company is the willingness to really take risks and not simply accept failure, but to celebrate the lessons learned from it. And if employees are too afraid to be punished for an idea that doesn't work out, then who wants to get shut down like that? People aren't going to try. They're not going to speak up. And so you may lose the benefit of a lot of good ideas and breakthrough or incremental innovations. So with all the items listed here, high-performing organizations are just far less likely to face these roadblocks, or at least not to the extent that we see them here. Another thing that we find is that when organizations were asked, to what extent does your organization use the following tools, we don't really see a high percentage of either the high-performance organizations or the lower-performance organizations really using these. But what we do know is that those that use them tend to be the highest the highest performers. The ones used most frequently are collaboration tools and also rotations and stretch assignments, giving people opportunities to learn new things, and collaboration tools to give them the opportunity to communicate, to discuss, to share ideas, no matter where they're located, no matter where, if they're across the world in other countries, they still have the opportunity to collaborate. So we can see that there's plenty of room for organizations to grow here, but these are things that can really also help build a culture of innovation. So let's go to one of our next questions now, and I'm going to send this over. And so the next question is, what do you think? Your organization could improve your innovation practices in the following areas. Could it be identifying innovation as a core competency, removing more barriers, or encouraging more job rotations and stretch assignments? So, or it may be all of the above. So I think you can click on more than one of these if you want to. Let's just take a look and go ahead and send your thoughts over and see what you think. Is there, where do you think that you could improve your innovation practices? Where would it help you? Where would be some of the key areas that would be most important to you? Still have a few answers coming in, okay? And I'm going to now show you the results. And here's what we see. Most of you, over 47% of you said all of the above, and we do then see a split between the other three options. It looks like most of you said removing more barriers to innovation, so decreasing those barriers would be important. So finding ways to do that. A lot of you 12% said identifying innovation as a core competency, as well as encouraging more job rotations and stretch assignments. So again, you can see that there's probably room for improvement for all of us to some great extent. All right, so so let's begin to look then now at what are some of the specific strategies that the learning function can take, and what could you do for those of you who are in training and development and learning and talent management of any sort. Let's talk about what you can do. So one of the first things is to realize that, organizations can't just hope that innovation is going to happen organically. We know it has to be nurtured, it has to be cultivated, and that's where we really see that the learning function comes into play. We see now that the learning function is more important than it's ever been to be able to start to develop those cultures that are really going to have an impact on your organization's bottom line. So I'm just curious, and this time I'm going to ask you just to raise your hand if you'd agree with this sentence. Do you believe that the learning function can and should play a critical role in helping to build an innovative culture? Just raise your hand if you agree. I'm just curious. It's almost as if we were in a room together, how many of you would raise your hands and you would say, yes, I believe that the learning function should play a role in that? And I'm seeing just about unanimous consensus all the way down the board. So I see a lot of you raising your hands. Yeah, we'd agree with that. So here's what we want to do then. Let's start to look at the benefit of having a strong learning culture. And this is where I really think, for those of you in learning development, it's really important to realize how important your function is. What we see here is that, according to a study by Burson and Associates, that they did a pretty in-depth study to look at what's the impact on organizations that really stress learning and had strong cultures around it. And they found that those organizations that had really strong learning cultures were 46% more likely to be strong innovators in their markets. So in other words, if there was a big focus on learning, if there was a big focus on encouraging people to think outside the box and be more creative and collaborate and discuss and share, then they tend to be stronger innovators. And what also happened is that helped them be 34% more likely to get to market before their competitors did, and 58% more likely to develop the skills needed to meet future customer demands. So here's a key thing here. What we see from this is that there is a definite correlation with the bottom line impact that the learning function in any organization can have. So don't underestimate your role. Learning is not just soft stuff. Learning significantly can impact the bottom line when it's done well. And it's important to take some of these concepts about innovation into your process of building a learning culture. So here are 5 specific strategies that the learning function can influence and develop. And we're going to go through each of these one at a time. You can see them listed here first as they're there. I want to tell you that I'm going to go through each one, but I'm not going to have time to go into each, in the time we have today, I'm not going to have time to go into each one in a great deal of depth. But I do promise I'm going to spend more time on number 1 and provide you again with some tools that you can use immediately to help you do that. But let's take a look at understanding each one of these now and go through what each one of these really are. So the first one is you got to know your starting point. And, isn't that true with, just about anything? You've got to have a way to diagnose where you currently are before you can ever prescribe, the actions you need to take. So in other words, you might begin to start to think about things like, are your senior executives on board with innovation? Do they really realize the benefits to be gained or the losses that could be incurred based on having a strong, innovative culture? Do your managers, everyone below them, do they realize how important their role is to foster an innovative workforce? Do all your team members, do all your employees really understand how important innovation is? And, before you ever develop a roadmap, we had a map in front of us to reach a destination, and we decided that we're going to get to Miami. We've got to know exactly where we're starting from to develop our critical path. Well, that's the same with this process, too. If you're going to hit any goal, you've got to know where you're starting. And so, again, I'll give you more resources about this in just a few minutes. Let's go to the next one now. And the next one is to align your learning goals with the business results needed. Now, that means that you want to, and I hope many of you are doing this now, but some of you may not. It means that you provide learning resources designed to target the specific business results that are identified for your organization. So you identify what those results are, and then you recognize what the learning needs are based on those. So, for example, do you have programs that help people think outside the box and know how to be creative? If innovation is important to your organization, do you have tools for that? Do you have learning resources designed to help everybody know your ideal vision and what culture you need to have to do that? Do your leaders have the skills that they need? Are you able to communicate in your learning programs why these are so important and let everybody realize the importance of innovation in order to really survive and grow? Because innovation has never been more important than it is now. And that's why we see those studies like the one we saw when we first started where so many senior executives are saying it's critical to their organization and yet disappointed that they know how to do it. This is where the learning function comes into play. This is where you can help and really align those goals with what you do. Now, here's another thing that's interesting to look at. In last year's State of the Industry report by American Society of Training and Development, they asked, to what extent would you consider your organization's learning goals to be aligned with the organization's business goals? And again, they broke it down between their highest performing organizations and their lowest ones. And you can see that there was a big difference from those that were higher performers. They were much more aligned with their organization's business goals. So this is another way that the learning function directly contributes to business results, and it really can have a bottom line impact. Higher performance organizations just see more of an effect to align the learning function. And because of that, their learning has more impact, and people understand, they get the message out about what's really important that everybody needs to do so that they are also, all employees are aligned with each other, aligned with the goals, and aligned with, where the organization is going and needs to be headed. Okay, let's go to the next one. And this we started to talk about a minute ago because we see that the best organizations do this, but that is incorporating innovation as a competency. So, we talked briefly about that, but basically what you want to do is at this point, you want to encourage discussions within your organization about the importance of innovation. So if you don't have innovation as a competency now, you really want to encourage it because it's so critical. You want to include it as something that you can put in your company's performance management process. How are we being measured on that? Are we, that helps people really expect that they're supposed to think outside the box, that everybody's supposed to be looking for ways we can tweak this or tweak that or improve that or find new and better solutions through our processes and the way we work together. So this is what makes people accountable, and they really know it's important when you build this competency into your performance management process because there's a structure for it in place, and it's emphasized coming from the top. And people then begin to start to really recognize that, boy, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to be, at the end of the year, I'm going to be evaluated on how well I do that. So when those kinds of things happen, people will have a tendency to step up to the plate. The next one is to encourage job rotations and stretch assignments. Now, we talked about that a moment ago because that was also something that the best organizations did. But let's look at it in more depth. Your employees, they're going to look for structured processes, not just the words in place, but do we have ways to make those words take action? And so having job rotations and stretch assignments is just one simple process that broadens their horizons and it helps them see the big picture. If they have a chance to be involved in job rotations, they have a better understanding about how the organization works. They have a better understanding about what other teams need from them. It helps them it helps them change their thinking too because they get out of doing the same thing the same way, the same place. And so they begin to expand their perspective. And what's interesting about this is that it's actually motivating to people. Not only do you see knowledge transfer occur here, but engagement increases here. And people want to expand and grow. And what you see happen is that as they do that, you have enhanced innovation too. All right, let's go to the last one now, the last specific strategy, and that is to provide leadership programs that encourage innovation. Now, we know that not all leadership programs are created equal, so you need one that's targeted to your organization and your needs, and you want to make sure that your leaders know how to have one-on-one conversations with each of their individuals. And there are, several things they need to be having conversations about if the leaders are going to encourage innovation. They need to let people know that they're inspiring innovation by looking for different perspectives. People are going to really wonder, do they really want to hear my opinion? Or are they just saying that? And so the leaders have to really make that a focus and move forward that way. They've got to build processes to support it within their teams. So they might begin to start to have meetings where they talk about innovation. They recognize people that are finding new ways to do it. The leaders are having conversations around that. The leaders also need to be assessing opportunities to stimulate creative thinking. Instead of just telling people what to do, I start asking where do they see that they could set up task groups, or where could they set up, what are their ideas, and begin to start brainstorming and letting them take ownership for coming up with new and better ways. The leaders need to start creating champions by helping their team cut through bureaucracy and find ways to immediately go to new ways of working that is going to help everybody. And last but not least, they need to successfully launch innovations and provide the resources that people need. So they need to give them the tools they need. If they need collaboration tools, they need to do that. If they need a way to cut through the processes to make it easier, then the leaders need to do that. So leaders need to be talking with their team members all the time about ways that encourage innovation. They need to be demonstrating it themselves. They need to be talking about it in their meetings, and to help everybody get on board. Because, again, the employees are going to be quietly testing the leaders' true intentions. They're going to wonder, well, are their ideas really going to be listened to and encouraged? They're going to wonder, will they have the support they really need to be innovative? They're going to wonder, what's going to happen if they make a mistake in the process. All of that is discouraging innovation. And the ones that are in the best position to encourage it instead are the one-on-one leader that they work with. And this is why we see that the leader's role is extremely critical. I'll tell you, you could put all the structured processes in place that you've spent a lot of time on, and they're absolutely beautiful, but if you don't have your leaders in alignment with that, it's going to fall flat. And so you've got to look at what the leaders are doing and how they can help you with that. And so let's look at, for just a minute, why the leader's role is so important. And this, I think, is a really interesting study by Oliver Wyman. And one of the things that they asked is, what is the greatest challenge to delivering business results? And look what they said the biggest challenge was. Leaders creating a climate for innovation. Now, that's followed by creating an organizational structure and focusing innovation in the right places. But, one of the things that we see is that innovation is key, and the leaders play a primary role. And it can be challenging. And it's important to really get those leaders on board. When we also go back and look at the State of the Industry report from last year from ASCD, they see that the top 3 learning content areas start with managerial and supervisory learning, so leadership training. Then comes professional industry-specific learning and processes, procedures, and business-specific learning. So, again, leadership training, managerial and supervisory training, it needs to be done in the right way. It needs to be strong with very good reinforcement tools, and it needs to be customized for your organization. But the good news here is that it is possible, and that you in the learning area can make a huge difference. And it's probably one of the easiest steps to implement, that we've discussed so far. You can do it much quicker than you could some of those others. So here's the next question for you. I'm going to bring another polling question up. And let's see what this says. So the question is, could leaders in your organization put more emphasis on encouraging innovation than they do now? And just select yes or no. Do you think they could do a better job of encouraging innovation than they do now? What are you noticing? Could they do better, or are they pretty good at it? Is there room for improvement? Do they need to be stronger at encouraging innovation? So let's look at, looks like we've got quite a few answers in. So let me show you the results. And here's what we see. 94% of you said yes. Our leaders could do a better job of putting more emphasis on encouraging innovation. And if that was you, then the good news in that that's one of the easier things you can do. It may take you longer to get competencies in if you're not already. It may take you longer to overcome some of those barriers, and it may take you longer to get some of the other tools in place. But getting your leaders on board can pay a big dividend to your organization. So let's start to look at then, I told you that I promised I'd go back to this first one about how do you kind of know your starting point, and how do you look at then, if you were to begin with this, if you know this is something that's really important that you want to be able to start to do, how can you then begin to start to recognize how to assess your organization's climate for innovation? How do you know where you are? And that's probably the first step for anyone to begin to start to take. You know, what's a specific, tangible next step that you can take today? And I want to show you and give you some ideas. Now, many of you may be familiar with this study. This was a very extensive study that Gallup did, where they studied over 1 million employees in a variety of industries. It took them almost 30 years. And what they did is they wanted to find out, what did people really believe in the highest performing organizations? So in those companies that had the highest level of profitability, productivity, employee retention, and customer loyalty, how did their employees believe? What did they think? What were kind of their experiences within their company? And what they found after that extensive study is this comment, that what becomes clear is that while we tend to celebrate great companies, in reality there are only great managers. And it's on the front line that the hard work of building a stronger workplace gets done. So in other words, great companies are really developed during those daily one-on-one relationships and interactions that each of your managers or supervisors have with their team members. So once again, we see that the leader's role is critical in providing that type of culture that can enhance innovation as well as productivity and profitability. And I'm just curious, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand again. How many of you are familiar with this study by Gallup? It's sometimes known as the Q12 data. It would just be good feedback for me to see how many of you are familiar with it. I'm not sure if everybody is. It looks like some of you are, some of you are not, but a lot of you aren't. So here's what we see again from this. Let me lower these. Here's what we see from this, is that an important starting point, once again, is to identify what's happening with your managers to build a more innovative culture. And what are they doing in those daily interactions with their team? So here's what we have developed that we think can help you. The Innovative Leadership Assessment helps you identify where your organization is and where your managers are in relation to these elements that impact innovation. So in other words, this is an assessment that you take based on what you see your managers or supervisors are doing overall as a whole. And it's broken down, it's your perception of your organization's managers. And it's broken down into these areas. Vision and mission, are people talking about innovation? Do they see it as important? Communication, are they really bringing that up frequently, talking about it? Engagement and motivators, are your managers and supervisors doing things that build an engaging workforce that inspires innovation, or are they maybe unknowingly shutting it down? Mentorship and performance, are they showing people how to grow, how to improve, how to develop, which is also going to be able to give them more opportunities to contribute more? And overall, what's the climate for innovation? Is it okay sometimes to make a mistake? If it's a thought out mistake, is learning emphasized, or are people punished for it? And so the Innovative Leadership Assessment is a tool that helps you, again, assess what you see happening with your leaders in your organization. Now, here's a really important point. Notice that all of these things do not require a huge capital expenditure, and they don't require a lot of time to implement. You know, these are things that could be implemented by your first-time supervisors all the way up to your senior executives. And it's also directly something that the learning function can do and to help your leaders build a more innovative culture. So what it does is it helps you see where your performance gaps are. You know, where are we strong in which areas? Where are we not strong? And where do you want to create an action plan based on what you see is going on in your own organization and the impact it may have? Now, it's not going to take long to complete. And once you do it, you have a chance to get your results immediately. And you will also, once you get your results, you'll have an opportunity, if you would like, to schedule a strategy session with me. Now, this is an opportunity in the strategy session where it's a conversation, it's a private conversation between the two of us. I don't have time to go into the unique nuances of every single person in this webinar today in your organization, but we can do it in a private one-on-one conversation. There's a lot of additional things I can add, a lot of suggestions I can share that will help you begin to start to think about, okay, what do you need to do as a learning professional going forward within your own company? And so we're really providing this out of a desire to provide meaningful value to you, and that's the purpose of it. So I would love to talk further. Don't be shy about scheduling these strategy sessions. What you'll see is that as soon as you finish the assessment, you get the results immediately, and you have an option at that time. If you'd like to schedule a session, you can do it yourself. We have an online tool that will let you schedule it whenever, at the times I'm available and the times that you can see when you would like to do it. So if you really want to make a positive contribution in your company, this is an excellent opportunity where you can learn more about what's going on and what do you need to think about. And it could also be something that you can print it off, you can have discussions about it. Now, also, what we will do is we will also provide you at the end of that our ebook called Tips for Innovative Leadership. And what that does is also provide additional tools and resources beyond what we had a chance to really talk about today. So let's look at what we've discussed so far. And as we started, our agenda was to look at what are the high-performing organizations doing and how are they unique to cultivate innovation. What are 5 specific strategies that the learning function can take, and how you can assess your organization's climate for innovation now. So again, the big picture is that we know that learning definitely influences innovation, and the role the learning function plays is bigger and more important than it has ever been in the past. And I think that's directly because the market and the economy is getting tougher, and for organizations to succeed, they have to innovate, and that's why we see it being so important to CEOs of so many companies. And what it also means is that the learning function can have a real impact on an organization's bottom line because of it. Another resource I'm happy to share is our corporate training tips blog. This is the address if you want to jot it down. There's a lot of research here, and we've archived all of our articles into different topics. So this can be a learning resource for you, for your teams in your organization. It's free. We're happy to share it. You'll notice that on the right-hand side of the blog, everything is categorized by topics, so you'll see things there for leadership, for communication, for team building, time management, stress management, meeting management, all kinds of topics. So it's a wealth of, the archive of articles. So feel free to take a look at that, and we hope that you find it a good resource for you. So in a moment, I'm going to bring up a couple ways that you can access the Innovative Leadership Assessment if you'd like. One is the next screen that I bring up will show you what the URL is, and you can save it and go there. Another way is that Kathy is going to be typing in what the URL is in the chat box. It looks like she just did. If you go to the chat box on your GoToMeeting panel, you can click on that link that Kathy just put in there, and that will take you immediately to the assessment. Again, it won't take you long to do, and you'll get your results right away. So here is the link. If you want to just write it down and go to it, it's pretty simple to remember, assessleaders.com. And at this point, then, I just want to see what questions anybody might have, and really encourage you to take advantage of that assessment instrument, because I think it will really be a good tool to help you, and your role is really important in your organization. Kathy, I wanted to save some time at the very end so that we could answer questions, make sure we're on track with people's needs. So can you tell me, Kathy, you've been monitoring the questions. Can you tell me what questions we might have, and I'll try to answer those now.
Okay, here's one. I'm part of a larger department and don't make decisions independently. How can I encourage our organization to make innovation a competency?
That's a good question. Well, so I'm assuming that what this person is saying is that they think it's a great idea, but it's not one person's decision, which obviously is the case. And so if that was your question, or if you find yourself in that situation, I would encourage you really to talk to your own manager, escalate that up to your VP of HR, and then begin to start to have conversations with the CEO and encourage your senior leadership team to start to talk about it. I think a key thing to recognize is that you want to model innovation yourself, so don't hold back. I mean, if you think this makes sense, and it really is a good idea, we'll be sending the recording out for this. Everybody will receive the recording of this tomorrow. Feel free to share this recording with anyone in your organization you'd like. If you feel like this is a good idea, don't hold back. Go talk to the people on your teams that can encourage that, and really, really encourage them to take it to the next step, because I really do believe that that's a good way to make sure everybody knows innovation is important. So, good question. Kathy, were there any other questions there?
Yeah, here's another one. What are some tools to facilitate collaboration that you talked about?
Okay, good. Okay, good question too. So I think that was the one where we were talking about the tools and what the best practices did, and some ways to encourage collaboration. I'm going to share some ideas. If anybody else has any suggestions, please also feel free to send those over in chat or to put them in the question box. But some ideas that I would think of would be almost like what we're doing now. GoToMeeting is a good one. It's a little easier to collaborate than GoToWebinar because you have smaller groups there. We have a larger group here, but you can have more interactivity. You could have people, from different countries coming on. Another thing is, having an intranet within your organization and sharing information there. I hear sometimes of people who have repositories, chat rooms inside their own organization, wikis, things like that. You could have social media sites that encourage collaboration. You might have something either within your own organization that does that, or you might find that you can have collaboration groups even outside with other people in similar industries or job functions across the board with other organizations too. But if you know of any additional specific tools beyond those, feel free to share them with us, and we'll just send us a note over and put it in the questions. And Kathy, let me know if you get any other comments, and maybe we can see if if the group here has any other suggestions as well. Any other questions, Kathy?
Yes, here's one. What steps do you recommend for cultivating buy-in? We all know that culture changes take time, so how do you help management stay involved over a long period of time?
That's a good point, too. I think you're right. Culture does take time. It doesn't happen right away. And so one of the key things you have to do is constantly reinforce the key elements of the culture that you want to have people focus on. what we do in we do a lot of culture integration sessions for our clients, and one thing that we always do with that and with our leadership programs or any course we have that's important like that is build in a lot of reinforcement tools as well. We have reinforcement webinars that we hold regularly for a year after the class. We have newsletters and reinforcement tips that everybody gets once a month. I think the key thing is that you've got to encourage your senior managers to take a long-term vision. We've seen a lot of research also around successful companies that they take a long-term vision instead of just a short-term one. And for some of you that might be publicly held, it can be a little more difficult to take a longer-term vision if you've got to worry about stockholders' prices. But what you may find is that when you can take a longer-term vision, especially as it relates to culture, and begin to start to see where do we want to be and why is it important, and start to take the actions to move you there, it can make a lot of sense to your senior leaders to begin to start to have those discussions. So I would encourage you to have conversations about where you're going, what's the long-term vision, and what do you need to do to get there. And I hope I answered that question. I think there's a lot to it, but feel free. If I didn't answer if anybody's answered any questions so far and you'd like me to elaborate more on those, if I didn't answer it all, send me a note and we can talk privately. What other questions, Kathy, did you have?
Okay, let's see. Is there any difference between product innovation, we do very well, and business process innovation, not so well?
Good one. Really good one. I think that sometimes people think product innovation is all that innovation is. And process innovation is where you have everybody realize it's their job to be an innovator. Sometimes if you have an R&D team and their job is to innovate new products, they know that's their job and that's all they focus on. Whereas if you're looking at process innovation, that's everybody looking at it. Those people that are closest to the process are the best ones to create new and better solutions to it. So it's a matter of pushing down the focus of innovation to everyone so that you begin to start to encourage everybody to recognize they need to speak up, they need to be always looking for better ways to improve, they need to always be looking for ways to do it better, faster, cheaper, and that all those ideas are encouraged and expanded upon. Your leaders should be able to help with that, but that should be a message that goes through the whole organization. What other questions, Kathy?
Let's see. We did have somebody respond to help out with the facilitate collaboration. He said that Microsoft Office Communicator, you can chat and share a screen. Limit is no more than 3 on the same chat.
Okay.
So that's another way you could collaborate.
Microsoft Office Communicator. Great. Okay.
And the last question that I have is, can I also ask my manager to take the assessment?
Absolutely. In fact, I would encourage that. And if you even have other people on your teams or your senior leaders or your CEOs, encourage them to take it too, because it's a good discussion point to talk about what are your different perceptions. And if you start to see a trend that everybody is rating things lower, that's a great point to say, okay, let's talk about how we fix this then. So if we've got a really sore thumb in a certain area, let's heal it. Let's talk about it. Let's look for ways to address it. And so definitely, you just write down this website, and anybody can go to this site and take this assessment. It's free. We encourage it. It's fine with me. I think it's a good idea. Any other questions there, Kathy?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say thank you to everybody for your participation today. I think that your job is really important. Don't underestimate how important the learning function is. It's going to just increase in the future. It's going to be even more important in the future going forward. And so don't be shy about speaking up. Don't be shy about taking the assessment. And please, I welcome an opportunity for us to talk further in the strategy sessions. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye.